issues, analysing the facts, throwing out the fiction. It's pure, unadulterated opinion. No topic off limits, no holding back, no scripts, no rules. So bring it on. Barry Soper, Trish Sherson, Chris Carter, Heather Duplessis-Allen. The Front Bench on News Talk ZB.
Kia ora, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. Coming up today, we will have the front bench with us in just a tick, and then coming up after 5 o'clock, Megan Woods on that vaccine deal. Why isn't there enough for everyone there? Is Judith Collins right? Is obesity not an epidemic? And we're going to speak to the Kiwi who struck a deal with a Kardashian.
The front bench.
Right, well, it is no surprise that National is using the Green Party wealth tax to attack Labour. And in retaliation, Jacinda Ardern has accused National of spreading misinformation.
My only frustration is that the National Party continues to use misinformation in their campaign.
So is she right? Is this misinformation? Well, yeah, but not really, actually, because National is, to be honest, probably going a little bit far to frame the wealth tax as if it's definitely going to happen. But they are not wrong to raise the spectre of the thing, because it remains a possibility, albeit a small one. It remains a possibility as long as we have contradictory positions from the Labour and the Green parties. Even this morning we saw it play out again here on News Talk ZB. Labour Party leader Jacinda Ardern ruled out a wealth tax.
We've said all along that is not our policy, and nor, even if we were in the position where we were having to negotiate with the Greens, would that be part of the negotiations.
But then on another radio station not long afterwards, Green Party co-leader James Shaw was told what Jacinda Ardern had said and responded like this.
Let's find out after the election.
And then he was asked to elaborate, and he pointed to the fact that the government is gathering less tax right now and spending a lot more.
I don't think that it is credible in that situation not to have a conversation about both the fairness of the tax system, the distortions within the tax system, and the amount of revenue that government needs to raise in order to be able to get ourselves through this crisis and then to pay back the debt that's associated with that. It's just not credible.
Look, as long as the Greens hold to that position, that they are going to push a wealth tax after the election, it remains a credible attack for the Nats to use on a possible left-bloc government. In reality, as I said, there is still a very, very small chance of a wealth tax. Labour has now ruled it out so often and so vehemently that it would be credibility destroying for them to U-turn on that. And if you were to choose which of the parties is more likely to buckle in negotiations, it would surely be the Greens. After all, the lure of power is strong, and there will be plenty of other policy wins that they can have to dull the pain. So no, it's not misinformation from the Nats, it's just politics.
The Front Bench.
All right, let's bring in our front bench now. We have political editor Barry Soper, former ACT Party Press Secretary Trish Sherson, and former Labour Party Minister Chris Carter. Great to have you all here. Chris, let's start with you. Is National scaremongering?
It's getting desperate. The polls are looking terrible for Judith and her team. But I agree with you, Heather. It's a legitimate question. It's been denied vehemently by Jacinda and by Grant. And in the end, it'll be numbers. And the likelihood of the Greens being having a majority of MPs in any coalition negotiation is pretty tiny. So I guess Labour will be the more powerful in the negotiation. And as you've just rightly pointed out, there will be lots of opportunities for environmental wins that will sit comfortably within Labour's policies as well as the Greens. So I think the Greens, they're putting a line in the sand, but it's not a red line, I don't think.
No. And they're very, very clear to say that as well, very keen to say that. How many MPs do they need, Trish, in order to be able to force this thing?
Well, it depends on the numbers for Labour and the Greens, doesn't it, about the strength in there. I think it is a green line, but the interesting thing also about the National campaign is it's gone hand in glove with a leaf drop from the Taxpayer Union over the weekend. I don't know if you guys got one in your letterbox, but actually addressed to the person and saying, "You're home, blah, blah, blah." So they're obviously working hand in...
Not coincidental.
No, I thought, oh, that's interesting.
Trish, do you think it's a desperate ploy? What do you think of the Prime Minister's words? It's a desperate ploy.
No. Well, I think it is a legitimate question.
Yeah.
I did kind of roll my eyes, and actually the other thing I did think was, what would you do if you were in National's position, given that most people have voted, you're into your last week? Would there be one more thing you would pull out of your bag that was actually something for you and your voters rather than on the other side?
Well, Alfred Nauru tried to, didn't he?
Well, let's talk about that, because I found that really disappointing.
Now, just run us through what he said. It was on social media and it was with regards to what?
So it was a post attacking Phil Twyford, which normally I'm not opposed to, if it's about non-delivery, not personal.
My successor as MP.
Not a patch on you.
As you've reminded
Thank
us
you,
time and time
hasn't
again.
been a standout performer, but actually raising points about things that Phil stands for, like full-term abortion.
And it wasn't truthful. It was sort of Trump-like.
Awful things, and I do think that's the second time we've seen in this campaign MPs deliberately putting out misinformation on social media, and I think that absolutely has to stop. And party leaders should take a very hard line on it.
I think the thing you've got to remember, though, about coalition negotiations, that I've seen so many parties go into the negotiating room and come out with different positions. Now, Jacinda Ardern is vehement that there's not going to be a wealth tax. But going into the last election coalition negotiations, she was also vehement that she had made a captain's call on capital gains tax, and that was going to happen in the first 3 years of this Labor-led government. Well, as we know, it didn't happen because Winston Peters didn't like it. And there's nothing in my book to say that James Shaw, he raised the prospect of the wealth tax again this morning. He wasn't prompted, he simply raised it. So he's put it back on the table, and believe me, it will be on the table at a coalition negotiation if it comes to that with Labor. That's not to say that Labor will pick up and go with it, but look, all bets are off when it comes to coalition negotiations and what emerges from them.
The thing is, obviously, there are alternatives, right, Chris? So if the Greens are really, really stuck on this, if they really care about it, they can walk away from government, unlikely. They could take other wins, or they could choose to support from the crossbenchers, right? All of these are possibilities. So we have a number of ways we can deal with it. But to Labor on this, how does Labor credibly go from a government that cares, a party that cares so much about inequality that it wants to do a capital gains tax, to a party that watches inequality get worse but doesn't want to do anything about it this time? How is that credible?
I think that, when the Prime Minister's been asked this question, she made it clear that she believed in a capital gains tax.
So why doesn't she believe in a wealth tax?
But the public had rejected that, right?
So why doesn't she believe in a wealth tax?
I mean, she believes in democracy, and clearly it's not popular.
But democracy screws people at the bottom, doesn't it?
Labor came second in the last election, and it was largely on the tax over the issue of a capital gains tax. I think Jacinda and the government have seen that that's a really hard sell. And I'm sure that they'll be looking at other ways in which we can
raise taxes.
I think it's a really clever piece of politics from James Shaw, though. If you think about it, he's played the positive strategy all the way along. He hasn't had a crack at the government that he's sort of been a part of, but this is the one thing he knows, and look at us today, that will get a lot of chatter. I think you would be surprised about the number of people who support not a wealth tax, but some kind of, whether it was a capital gains type thing. That thing is still out there, and he's playing into that, and it actually goes outside the green base you would think of. So I think in the last week it's clever for him because we're all talking about it, and it might just drive a few more votes as well.
That's what it's all about. It's essentially simply about politics.
And for them, that's very important at the moment because they're hovering around 5-6%
in the last call.
Absolutely, that's not safe at all. All right, listen, let's take a break at 4:16. When we come back on News Talk ZB with our front bench, we are going to talk about the horror week that the National Party had last week. News Talk ZB.
Good location, eh?
It is. The median sale price is up 6.2%. Your work is 23 minutes away. And we're in zone for a great primary school.
School? Why does that... matter.
Are you ready to settle on a new home? With One Roof, you'll find all the information you need, from thousands of in-depth listings, sales data, suburb information, property records and much more. Be property prepared with One Roof.
How can you tell what's real? Is it real if you've read it, heard it, seen it? The story is a story as soon as it's been shared. But how do you know you can believe it?
Believe it when you read it in New Zealand's Herald.
List your vehicle for sale on Driven for just $20. Load up to 25 photos, keep your listing up until it sells, and reach thousands of potential buyers. Sell your car at nzherald.co.nz.
Talk ZB.
All right, it's 18 past 4 and you're back with the front bench. Kath says on the text machine, please don't forget Jacinda said no new taxes. And then they added the light rail tax, which they haven't taken off. And that will be causing people a few concerns, I think, promises that aren't kept. Anyway, listen, it's been a difficult week last week for National. The word is already that she will be rolled post-election. But the question is, how much is Judith Collins actually to blame for what has gone wrong here? Trish, what do you reckon?
I think she has carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. I think the Todd Muller shambles will still need to be forensically unpicked post the election. I think what led to that and how to prevent that happening again really needs to be fully explored by the National Party, because if you...
Do you think punishment meted out to those who rolled him, who rolled up bridges?
Well, I just think that as an organisation, you have to go, what were the fail-safes that weren't in place to go that could actually happen?
Yeah.
And also that the hurt, the anger, the tensions that were caused by that, everyone's had to just put those aside to get on with the campaign,
right.
including Judith, and she has. And also she has been ankle tapped along the way by a whole lot of absolute muppetry that you
one by the name of Denise Lee.
Oh,
of course.
You must. It would, you imagine you're out there and you're on the campaign trail. It would be like a gut punch. You'd be actually, the old air would go out of your balloon pretty quickly. So I think if you looked at performance on, getting from a pretty standing start, she has done a pretty great job. The debates, they actually got the Nats sort of back in the race. She might hold them at the mid-30s, which again in the current climate is almost a Herculean task in itself. But I think the Nats from the top to the bottom are going to have a look at
Party
themselves.
president?
100%.
All the way down.
I think also, the tragedy for Judith Collins was that, she was never going to have Jacinda mania. She was never going to attract that sort of attention, because when you think about it, Jacinda became the leader of the Labour Party around the same time out from the last election that Judith Collins took over. But I think she's had actually bad advice. To put somebody on Ponsonby Road at 11 in the morning, and I live just off Ponsonby Road, and bugger all people are there at that time in the morning. A lot of shops have closed. And really, to have her walking along there and expecting to run into, she ran into supporters because they'd been strategically placed. It was just a terrible look. And she's had to battle against that. And she's given up, essentially, doing walkabouts because Jacinda is mobbed in walkabouts like John Key used to be, whereas nobody takes much notice of poor old Judith Collins.
But that's the thing, isn't it? It's about picking your narrative for the day. What was that walkabout about? If it was about, hey, Ponsonby Road's been absolutely screwed over by closures and lockdowns and we've got empty shops everywhere, make it about that and have a shopkeeper who's going out of business.
See, and she used to be a press secretary. secretary.
And have the focus of that, or go to a business on Ponsonby Road who you know have a story that's going to fit around your narrative for the day.
And that's going to be friendly.
250 metres in a walkabout can be it can be the longest, the long road to the deep north when you're a political leader out there flapping around. Shocking.
I think that the most damaging thing for her has not been the prayer session or silly Alfred Naro putting out sort of lies about his opponent, but it was Paul Goldsmith getting the numbers wrong, because that brought the credibility of the program that National would like to implement if it became the government. It brought it into question. I think that was the most damaging thing in the campaign.
Well, especially in the background, saying that we're waiting for the pre-election fiscal and economic update, and then waiting for those specific numbers, and then to use the budget numbers.
Denise Lee's email probably helped Denise quite a lot. It gave us some probably really good profile.
Do you think so?
And I think, and not in the caucus, of course, and certainly not with the leader, but I imagine with the voters in Mangakiki thinking, well, she's sticking up for us. Sticking up for
I would have thought the voters in Mangakiki would surely want a review of Auckland Council like the rest of us. Anyway, let's take a break. We've got plenty to get through in the next half hour or whatever we've got left, just slightly over a half hour. We're going to talk about the Deputy Prime Minister, who is likely to be picked for Labour. Will it be Calvin? Oh, dear God. And also, what's going on with the Maori Party? Are they staging a comeback? So there's plenty to get through right now. It is 4:23. News Talk ZB. All right, it's 4:26. We will very shortly get to who should be the Deputy Prime Minister under Labour leader Jacinda Ardern should she win. So many options. But first, let's deal with MMP. Now, David Seymour has foreshadowed his own party's demise. Have a listen.
5 elections' time. Probably, the Greens will be gone. ACT will make it for the next few elections, but probably not forever. And we'll be back to 2 parties.
Yeah, so Chris, what do you think is going on here? Is MMP this time round going to be the loser because it's a COVID election and things are just so wonky? Or is this the trend that we are returning to an FPP system?
It's been remarkably stable. In Germany, where MMP has existed much longer than in New Zealand, it's functioning well. Look, of course, under an MMP system, there's going to be rises and falls, but there has always been smaller parties in there. Maybe David is sort of thinking of sort of political death with dignity.
Political euthanasia.
Well, that is the scourge, of course, of smaller parties hooking up with the big parties. And it was interesting because thinking about the MMP equation that we in the media concentrate on National and Labour, and it's been suggested that when it comes to debates, God forbid, because they're bad enough now, but giving them all equal time, because no one party should be seen as above another, whereas, in fact, the polls tend to dictate who they have in
but that's because we
debates.
create it, right? We have a Jacinda versus Judith debate,
so
and then we've got everybody
they're
else.
the only two who can become essentially Prime Minister. Well, they're not really. If you've got a powerful party that gets, like Winston got in 1996, 17 seats in Parliament, you could say, well, I want to share the Prime Minister.
Trish, we have got to change MMP if we want this thing to keep working, right? We've got to drop the threshold.
Well, you go, do you? Or is that the right threshold? And I think actually that's where New Zealanders are saying yes, or even slightly higher, because what happens if you drop the threshold is that a drop...
You get Colin Craig.
Well, exactly.
or you get Israel, which had 3 elections in 14 months.
Well, or that.
So that's what you get when they've got 3.5%.
Fair enough. Now, this is my challenge to the three of you. Start thinking now who you'd like to see as Jacinda Ardern's deputy if she is Prime Minister after the election. Who's going to be the deputy Prime Minister?
Chris Carter, I think.
You're with the front bench. We're going to take the headlines. We'll be back very shortly. 4:28 News Talk ZB.
Good location, eh?
It is. The median sale price is up 6.2%. Your work is 23 minutes away. And we're in zone for a great primary school.
School? Why does that matter?
Are you ready to settle on a new home? With OneRoof, you'll find all the information you need, from thousands of in-depth listings, sales data, suburb information, property records and much more. Be property prepared with OneRoof.
List your vehicle for sale on Driven for just $20. Load up to 25 photos, keep your listing up until it sells, and reach thousands of potential buyers. Sell your car at nzherald.co.nz.
Kia ora, Aotearoa. Talia Crabtree here with your weather forecast for the next few days. And we've had a very soggy start here in Wellington. I got wet coming into work this morning, and it's been very wet across the North Island. If we take a look at the rain radar at the moment, you can see there is these bright bands of cloud and lots of rain associated with that, mainly affecting these western regions at the moment. Periods of heavy rain in there. You can see there's blue area up here near Northland, bringing some rain bands across the upper north onto Auckland later today as well. And there are a number of heavy rain warnings and watches associated with this rain. We do have a couple warnings for Mount Taranaki and the Tararua Ranges. Heavy rain there is continuing until this evening, but the main thing to note is the latest watches that have been added for Tongariro National Park, these areas through Waikato, Taupo, Waitomo, Taumaranui, and also the eastern ranges of Bay of Plenty. So throughout today and into tomorrow, we are expecting periods of rain as this feature moves across. And you can find more details on those warnings over on our website. So take a look at what this front is doing. At the moment, it is moving on to the North Island. Throughout tomorrow, it will gradually make its way across with those periods of heavy rain, but by evening, be mostly offshore east of Bay of Plenty. And you can see down towards the south, another feature already starting to make its way onto the country again. And it's going to be a big player for our weather later in the week. But firstly, for Tuesday, the upper North Island, it's going to be a very wet, soggy day. Most places are going to be rainy throughout the day, but some very warm temperatures with those warm northerlies. We've got 21 up towards Kaitaia and most places in the teens throughout the day. As you can see, towards evening, the colours of the shower clouds a little bit brighter. They will start to ease. Could even see some fine spells around these more western parts by evening. Over the lower North Island, we do see that rain is mostly gone. Just a few showers continuing around Napier as that front trails across. Most of these regions, however, will have a dry but cloudy day. We've got these northwesterlies picking up again as we have that front approaching the country further south. It's going to start get quite windy again through Wellington. Reasonably fine, however, for Wairarapa in this northwest flow. Temperatures still on the moderate side, a little bit warmer over towards Masterton there, 19. Whanganui as well, also looking at getting up to 19. Over the upper South Island, a bit of a mix. We have a showery southwest flow continuing over on the west coast there. Not a great day for them. Could start brightening up around Westport later in the day. Over on the east, with all of this moisture around after that front has moved through, it's going to be a reasonably cloudy start around Canterbury and this east coast. Later on in the day, we should start to see the day brighten, especially around Christchurch, but further inland we are expecting some convergences in the afternoon. Could see some showers pop up through Canterbury there. They could get thundery as well, so make sure you check your forecast if you are in Canterbury. Over the lower South Island, looking like the best place to be tomorrow. It's going to be reasonably fine throughout the morning. Could see some early spots of fog, but by afternoon that will have cleared up. It's only later on at night we see this front arrive to the south. Invercargill, the first to see that. A brisk southerly change expected later in the evening. A very cold change, dropping down to 4 overnight for Invercargill. On Wednesday, this is when we're going to see this front move through over the North Island, mainly in the afternoon, bringing through a brisk southwest change. Showers mainly affecting the lower parts of the North Island, blocked by the terrain through Central Plateau, and it's going to bring some much needed rainfall to these eastern regions. Ahuriri and Turanganui-a-Kiwa are expected to get rain by the end of Wednesday. Very cold change associated with that one there. Temperatures dropping down to 7 overnight for these eastern regions. Over the South Island, it's all action in the morning, that change moving through. Very brisk southerlies, period of rain, temperatures plummeting very quickly. Could even see some snowfall through inland parts of Canterbury High Country with that front as it moves through. Now, the showers will ease off over in the west as that front tracks through, but over in the east is expected to be quite showery into the evening. Further south, temperatures are going to plummet below zero. Skies will clear, could mean that overnight it will be frosty. So if you are worried about the frost around central Otago, Southland, make sure you keep an eye on the forecast there. So we've got a lot going on in weather this week. It's in true spring fashion. Weather is quite changeable, so stay up to date with your forecast over on metservice.com.
Mexican 2 for $3, and Pam's cherry, grape or strawberry tomatoes $3.99 each. New World. Enjoy better. Sizes, limits, exclusions, T's and C's apply.
No topic is off limits. It's the front bench on News Talk ZB.
Welcome back to the front bench with Barry Soper, Trish Sherson and Chris Carter. After 5 o'clock, just a reminder, we have signed as a country a deal with Pfizer for the vaccine when it becomes available. We're going to speak to the minister in charge of that, Megan Woods, straight after 5 o'clock. Let's crack into this matter of who is going to be the Deputy Prime Minister if Labour wins a second term, because of course that is looking more and more likely. New Zealand First won't be back in Parliament, so that means that Winston Peters won't be there. Who do you think, Trish, I feel like I need to go to you on this one, who do you think becomes the Deputy PM? Is it Kelvin Davis?
Well, this is a classic case of electile dysfunction when you can't get aroused about any of the choices.
That's awful.
That's terrible.
Can we just block that? Can we just...
Too late.
I think what's happened right now is we'll have gone to a bit of a shock.
No, someone actually sent me that today about this election. I thought it was brilliant. But
it cannot be Kelvin. It can't be Kelvin because Kelvin is woeful, right?
Kelvin is woeful, and I would put Kelvin up with Phil Twyford as at the bottom of the performance ladder for this term. And actually, here's the thing about Kelvin. He has been invisible as the deputy leader. He has been invisible as the Minister of Tourism when his entire sector has gone tits up. And I just don't know how you could make him... And also remember, where he really stumbled, having done quite a good job in opposition, was when he had to stand in as Deputy Prime Minister. Remember that shocker in the House? And I think probably that's where he lost his confidence, and you really haven't seen
and when you consider, that's absolutely right, and when you consider when Labour makes a decision for the spokesperson when Jacinda Ardern's not there or Winston's not available, it's never Kelvin Davis. And look, personally, I like Kelvin. I think he's a really nice man. He was excellent in opposition with corrections. He really kept the then national government on their toes. But look, he's unsuited to that sort of power, I think, and a lot of people are. So I think, if James Shaw was assertive enough, if he had the numbers when they go into that negotiating room, there's nothing to say that, although Marama Davidson might have a problem with it because she's the co-leader, but James Shaw, I think he would fit quite well. But for my money, I would say the person who's performed the best for the Labour Party through all this COVID dreadful pandemic is Grant Robertson.
Okay.
And of course, he came within a hair's breadth of becoming
Grant Robertson
the leader.
would be the obvious choice, right, Chris? And in fact, most people would almost be forgiven for thinking that he is the deputy leader in Labour. The problem isn't so much putting Grant in, it's taking Kelvin out, because he has massive support with the Maori caucus, and they negotiated, according to Audrey Young's piece today, they negotiated that position for him. They take him out. How will the Maori caucus feel?
It's complicated for me to answer this because I know Kelvin really well. He was an MP when I was. And he's as Barry has just said, he's a very decent, honourable person who puts a lot of work in for his electorate and so on. And Heather, you've touched on a very important aspect. The leader, the Prime Minister, will be deciding. Jacinda will have to decide what about the politics of the caucus. And the Maori caucus inside the Labour Party will be larger after the election. We have a Maori candidate running in the safe seat of Palmerston North. It's likely that Northcote could fall to Labour, and if it doesn't, Shannon Halbert could well be a list MP, so yet another new Maori member. So it's a growing caucus.
Is that because? Are you saying that because you're involved in that campaign, right?
No one's talking about Northcote. No one knows that.
Did you mention Northcote?
But getting back to the issue,
the
issue that Heather has raised, who should be deputy leader? Helen Clark and Michael Cullen were an incredible duo. Jacinda and Grant are an incredible duo already, and James Shaw. Well, I think James Shaw would make an excellent foreign minister.
Will the Maori caucus accept it if Kelvin is taken out?
I don't know. We'll just have to see what.
I think you'd have
trade-offs
Billy Jackson jumping up and down. He would not like the idea at all, and that's exactly why Kelvin Davis is where he
Barry,
is.
what do you think of the idea of James Shaw as foreign minister? Because I think that'd be a great job for him.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to the idea necessarily. Why are you trying to get him out of the country so badly?
because after the finance minister, it's the next most prestigious job.
Yes, it is.
And he's a natural diplomat. I mean, this is a Green MP who is the fifth most popular person in the current government by Business New Zealand. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
and imagery it's not a bad imagery,
It's not
is
a bad
it,
image
for
on
a
the global
green
stage,
Exactly.
green,
So
yeah.
you heard it first on here.
Yeah, okay.
James Shaw for Prime Minister.
I think, well, I would actually support that if it is a Labour Greens government, but I think where we're getting to here, and this will be where the rubber hits the road, is how tough the Greens will be when they go in to negotiate.
Yeah, exactly.
And really how this will be the very first time, if they are really tough, that they have been, because they've been treated really badly by Labour in the past.
Trish, I mean, I think you raise a really good point. I wonder if the Greens will just be so excited to actually be in cabinet at the table that they will literally take whatever you give them. What do you think?
Well, on past record, you would have to say it's not going to be a particularly tough negotiation.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the Greens would want it to feel like that either for the electorate. It's kind of not their way. I think they would want
You think
the electorate.
consensus?
Yeah,
want
I think
consensus,
they would
right.
want the electorate to feel that they can work together. We've done this before. Here we are. We've tweaked a few things, and we're back. We're back as a government.
And they may look at Winston and what happens, like I talked about the scourge of MMP, that they are there at the moment, confidence and supply. So they're not a formal coalition partner. Yeah. And it's always, you look at the Alliance, formally in coalition, gone. You look at New Zealand First, gone twice. Yeah. So, look.
United Future, gone.
Yeah, United Future, gone. I mean, when you get into formal coalition agreements, it's really hard for a minor party. And maybe the Greens will look at that and go, hang on, we're happy where we were.
Yeah.
And that's
always a
well, and it would
possibility.
be a very green thing to be a little tail wagging a big dog in proportion to size. Whereas Winston, he felt he was the whole hind legs, if not right up to
the barker.
Oh, he had the whole thing.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, they might not be the only coalition partner for Labour, actually, potentially after the election. What about the Maori Party? They look like they're making some gains, so we'll talk about that after the break. And also absolutely have to get to whether the courts need to lift the name suppression of those people connected to the New Zealand First Foundation. So stay tuned. 17 away from 5 News Talk ZB.
ZB.
14 away from 5, you're back with the front bench. Question here on the texter, why not a woman Deputy Prime Minister, Barry?
Yeah, well, no, that's fantastic. But in the break, we were racking our brains to think, who could it be? And, there are not a lot of women, Maori I'm talking about, because I think we've
You have to swap out one member of the Maori caucus for another,
because the Maori caucus is growing. It was suggested Kiri Allen. Well, she's very articulate, she's feisty, but I don't know, to me, to be a good deputy leader, you've got to be a bit of a not unlike Calvin Davis when you think about it.
Yeah.
You've got to be a bit of a backroom person.
As to your idea, Chris, that James Shaw could be the foreign minister, somebody said whose carbon footprint would be miles too big. So he would have a philosophical problem with that.
Just do everything via Zoom.
He could, the first
Germany's
Zoom
had
minister.
a green foreign minister. Genscher was foreign minister for many years.
Yeah. We'll just get somebody to plant like 1 billion trees or something to offset it. So problem solved. Listen, there is a competition for some of the Māori seats, Chris, including Tamaki Makaurau, where John Tamahere is within striking distance of Pini Henare. Now, the Curia poll over the weekend had JT on 29%, Pini Henare on 35%.
Yep.
What are the chances of an upset?
Look, I've long thought that Labor had to be careful in Tamaki Makaurau because John has great profile.
Yeah.
I mean, I know him very well. We both became ministers in 2002, and of course he's a Westie like me. He lives very close to where I live here. But John is a very fascinating person. He's a mixed bag. He's got enormous talents, but he has a huge chip on his shoulder, and it impacts on his relationships.
Hard to control, I think.
Very hard to control, and very mercurial. When I was a government whip, he drove me absolutely crazy.
He would be.
Tell us some stories, Chris.
Oh, I could tell you many stories, but I won't.
Were you the government whip when the interview happened? Was it the Wishart interview?
No, I was already a minister then.
interview.
But before that I was.
These are going to be the electorates to watch, aren't they, Trish, actually? The ones, Te Tai Hauaru with Debbie Ngare Wapaka, Waiariki with Rawiri Waititi against Tamati Coffee.
Who, by the way, is John Tamahere's son-in-law.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
well, there
right.
you go. Now, these guys are all just catching up really fast. So we could have a little upset there. And as we know, the Māori Party's going to go with Labour, right?
But then look at the $100 million handed out to Marae up and down the country last Friday. Right. That'll bring them back on board. They'll be all voting Labour.
Oh, yeah, fair point. Listen,
but not
in the
New
matter,
Zealand First.
in the matter of the New Zealand First Foundation, Trish, 2 people have been charged, but their names remain suppressed. This has gone back to court for the appeal. The media has taken it to court for another appeal. Should they be named?
I can see why the media is appealing, but I think I don't think they will be named. And I think where it probably comes back to is that even though they are charged, there still has to be the presumption of innocence, and that's probably what the judge is reflecting on and keeping the names suppressed at this point in the electoral cycle.
What do you think, Barry?
Well,
because
I know
arguably, can I just make an argument, which is that if you are a New Zealand First voter or even considering it, you might want to know the full picture, mightn't you?
Well, no, we know. In fact, know a lot of the background as to why the suppression was given. And I think for fairly legitimate reasons, actually. But if you're a New Zealand First voter, you know that there's not an MP or anyone who was in the ministry that in fact is facing the charges. So I think that should appease any voter for New Zealand First to know that these people, the 2 people that have been charged, are not within the party in the strictest sense in terms of Parliament.
Chris, the judge has said on Friday when extending suppression, said it would continue because of the proximity to the election and that it could unsettle people who've already voted. Now, that seems to me, I mean, it feels a bit like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But if that is the toss-up and you know that people might be unsettled having voted, surely you should err on the side of full disclosure ahead of an election, no?
Yes, I see your point you're making here, though, but I agree with Trish and Barry. I mean, we have to presume...
I'm on my own here, aren't I?
You are here. I'm afraid either you are. We have to presume innocence until proven guilty. Yeah. I mean, voters who are voting New Zealand First or thinking about it know that these charges have been brought.
That's right.
So there's already a bit of it's the smell test. There's a bit of a bad smell about it all. But you've got to be fair. And
And
you're innocent till
anyway,
proven
I
guilty.
think the donation situation is ridiculous. The way, the rules are bad. There needs to be a total overhaul of it, because you get these situations. Now we see, another one with Jamie Lee Ross being in court and 3 Chinese businessmen. It's just out of control. It's got to be sorted.
Totally. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get the front bench to give us their final predictions ahead of Saturday's election. It's 9 away from 5. News Talk ZB.
Good location, eh?
It is. The median sale price is up 6.2%. Your work is 23 minutes away. And we're in zone for a great primary school.
School? Why does that matter?
Are you ready to settle on a new home? With One Roof, you'll find all the information you need, from thousands of in-depth listings, sales data, suburb information, property records and much more. Be property prepared with One Roof.
How do you know when something's real? Is it real if you've read it, heard it, seen it? The story is a story as soon as it's been shared. How do you know you can believe it?
Believe it when you read it in New Zealand's Herald.
G'day, I'm Sam, and here at nzherald.co.nz, we've got a nifty toolbox to help make buying and selling a car easier. Selling, but not sure what price to put on it? Our car value calculator will give you a really good starting point. If you're buying a new car, our cost to run tool will give you a rough estimate of what the car will cost you each year to run. We can also tell you the best time to sell so you get the sweetest possible return. Check out the toolbox at driven.co.nz.
News Talk ZB.
All right, it's 6 away from 5. We're going to get the front bench to give us their predictions. Barry Soper, Trish and Chris Carter. Barry, you put up your hand. You've volunteered to go first. Go on then.
Well, what's going to happen clearly is that the Greens aren't going to make it across the line. You're going to have a big wasted vote. So you'll have a party probably forming a government with, maybe 10% of the vote gone, so 45% would be enough to form a government. And if you look at the National Party, they'll come up to about 38. Then you'll have
Are you taking the mickey?
You'll have ACT,
I think he is.
Why don't you throw the Maori party in there with them as well?
No, the Maori party have said they're not going to go with them. But so then you've got ACT, and so you pushed over the 45%. So it'll be a national-led ACT government.
You're not serious.
Look,
You're not serious.
I think it's a foregone conclusion.
Okay, go on. Give me your numbers. Give me your numbers. Let me put it like this. Majority government Labour?
No, it won't be Labour alone. I think it'll be a Labour Green government.
Okay.
And I would say Labour will come in at about 44%.
Yep.
And the Greens will come in at, maybe 6.
Okay. And then National, never mind. Anyway, Trish, what do you reckon? Majority government Labour?
I think it's still a line ball call for the Greens. I still think at 6% it'll be a nail biting finish, and that's one of the potential surprises on the night. I think at the end of it, Labour will fall back slightly, and National, I think maybe I'm going to go between 34 and 36 to be really positive.
Oh, good.
I think ACT will come in at about 7.
Oh, yeah.
But I do agree with Barry. I think there will be quite a big wasted vote if you look at all the weirdos and all the funny billboards.
Chris, what do you reckon?
I'm
Labour
confident
alone?
that the Greens will get over the line.
Yes, just right.
I think that Labour will get between 46 and 47. I think National will get about 32 or 31. And ACT will get about 7. And I also think Labour will win Northcote, Auckland Central, and maybe Takanini.
Northcote.
And maybe Takanini.
I'm going to go with Labour alone, but cobbling the Greens on just for some insurance.
Yeah.
And I think National will squeak in at just over 30, and I think the Māori Party will be back. I reckon they're going to win a seat. Bold call.
That is
the
bold
rugby
call.
going to make a difference, Barry?
Well, no. Jacinda Ardern was asked that today, and she said, look, a draw is the best thing, because the day after the election, of course, then we can have a battle and
a good knees up.
Hopefully the right result.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds
Guys,
good.
It's been absolutely wonderful to have you on the front bench. Thank you, Chris Carter. Thank you, Trish Sherson. And thank you, Barry Soper. We've learned so much from them. Let's take the news, and then after that, let's go to Megan Woods. She's the minister in charge of signing up that deal with Pfizer for enough vaccine for only 750,000 of us. So what about the rest of us? We'll talk to her about that. News Talk ZB.